What if I told you that everything your grandpa taught you about being quiet on the ice is wrong? That all that tiptoeing, all that careful placing of the bucket, all that shushing your buddy is actually costing you fish? Sounds crazy, right? For generations, the golden rule of winter fishing has been simple. Silence is golden. Noise spooks fish. But today, we're going to challenge that head-on. We're going to explore a wild theory that under the ice, fish aren't scared of noise, they're terrified of absolute dead silence. Stick with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why your quietest days on the ice might also be your least productive. And I want you to tell me right now in the comments, do you believe noise is the #1 thing that spooks fish in the winter? Let's get into it. Let's be honest, the idea of being quiet is baked into our fishing DNA. It's a rule passed down from angler to angler. The logic seems sound, right? The ice is a thin barrier, sound travels well through it, and a big clumsy human dropping a thermos sounds like a bomb going off to a wary perch or walleye below. We've all been there. You see a new guy on the lake, stomping around, drilling holes like a madman, and you think to yourself, well, he's not catching anything today. This belief is so ingrained that we've built our entire winter fishing ritual around it. We use foam pads to kneel on, we set our gear down like it's made of glass, we walk on eggshells, but we do this without ever really questioning. Why? We just accept it as fact. But what if this fact is built on a misunderstanding of the underwater world? First, let's talk about the conventional wisdom. The idea that you need to be quiet is rooted in a simple, understandable fear. We don't want to scare the fish. A sudden, sharp noise like dropping a heavy tackle box right over a school of perch is obviously not a good thing. It's an unnatural, sharp impact. That kind of vibration is universally recognized as a threat in the animal kingdom. Think about a deer in the woods when a branch snaps. It's the same principle, so the old-timers weren't entirely wrong. Careless, loud, and sudden impacts are bad, but in our effort to avoid those sharp noises, we've gone to the other extreme. We've created an environment of total, unnatural silence, and that might be an even bigger mistake. We've focused so much on avoiding one specific type of sound that we've ignored the role of sound in general. Now let's consider what the underwater world is really like. It is anything but silent. Even under a thick sheet of ice, it's a living, breathing environment. There's the subtle sound of water currents moving against the underside of the ice. There's the clicking and crawling of invertebrates on the bottom. Other fish are moving around, their fins creating tiny pressure waves. The world a fish lives in has a constant low-level hum of activity. It's their normal. Think of it like the ambient noise in your own house, the hum of the refrigerator, the sound of the furnace. You don't even notice it because it's always there. For a fish, this constant stream of subtle vibrations is the sound of a safe, normal day. Absolute silence is not their normal, is. The ice itself plays a huge role in this acoustic environment. It's not just a lid on the lake, it's a massive sound dampener. It blocks out the noise of the wind, the birds, and other atmospheric sounds that are present during the open water season. So the world under the ice is already significantly quieter than it is in the summer, when you, the angler, arrive and then proceed to eliminate all sound that you create. You're contributing to an environment that is eerily, unnaturally still. You're creating a pocket of sensory deprivation. You might think you're being stealthy, but from the fish's perspective, you're creating a void. And in nature, a sudden void, a sudden absence of normal background noise often means one thing and one thing only. Let's use a real-world analogy that we can all understand. Imagine you're walking through a forest. The birds are chirping, the squirrels are chattering, you hear the leaves rustling. It feels alive and safe. Now imagine that all at once, every single sound stops. The birds go silent, the squirrels freeze. Complete and utter silence. What's your first instinct? It's not relief, it's fear. You immediately think a predator is nearby, a hawk, a coyote, something big. That sudden silence is a universal alarm bell in nature. Why would it be any different for a fish? When their world of constant, subtle vibrations suddenly goes dead, It's a signal that a predator is in the area, holding perfectly still, waiting to ambush them. And that predator in this case is you. To understand this, we need to think about how fish hear. They don't just have ears, they have a lateral line. This is a system of sense organs running down their sides that detects movement, vibration, and pressure gradients in the water. It's incredibly sensitive. They can feel the wing beats of an insect on the water's surface from feet away. They can feel the tiny vibrations of a struggling minnow. This is their primary tool for understanding their immediate surroundings. They are constantly processing a symphony of vibrations. So when you're sitting perfectly still above them, your jig hanging motionless, you are creating a hole in that symphony. You're not invisible. You are a zone of unnatural quiet that their lateral line can absolutely detect as something out of the ordinary and potentially dangerous. This all ties back to the fundamental predator-prey dynamic. Prey animals, like perch or crappie, are wired for survival. They are constantly on the lookout for anything that's not right. An approaching pike or walleye doesn't make a lot of noise. They move slowly, they stalk, they hold still before they strike. Their presence is often defined by a disruption of the normal patterns of the environment, including sound and vibration. So when a school of perch senses a large area of dead still water directly above them, their instinct isn't to think, oh, it's peaceful here. Their instinct is to think, something big and dangerous is right above us, holding perfectly still. The absolute silence you're creating mimics the behavior of a predator, not a harmless part of the environment. So, let's start to differentiate between bad noise and what we'll call ambient noise. The bad noise is the stuff Grandpa was right about: dropping a metal scoop on the ice, slamming your shack door, stomping your feet erratically. These are sharp, loud, percussive sounds that signal danger. But the ambient noise? That's the gentle scraping of your boots as you shift your weight. The slight vibration of you moving around in your shack. Even the rhythmic, low hum of a generator or an ATV 100 yards away. These are consistent, non-threatening sounds. They become part of the background hum. The fish can acclimate to these sounds because they aren't sharp and they don't signal an immediate, localized threat. The real enemy isn't noise, it's sharp, sudden, and unpredictable noise. I remember a day on the ice years ago that first made me question all this. We were fishing a point, and a group of guys set up pretty close to us with a portable shack and a small generator running to power a heater and some lights. My first thought was, great, there goes the bite. They were talking, moving around, and that generator had a constant low hum. But here's the thing, we started catching fish, and they were catching fish. In fact, it was one of the better days we'd had. The fish didn't seem to care one bit about that constant, predictable noise, but the guy 200 yards away, sitting in perfect silence, he wasn't catching a thing. That was the first crack in the old silence is golden rule for me. Think about the loudest thing we do, drilling a hole with an auger. According to the old wisdom, this should send every fish within 100-yard radius screaming for the hills. And yet how many times have you dropped a lure down a freshly drilled hole and gotten a bite almost immediately? It happens all the time. Why? Because the sound of an auger, while loud, is a temporary event. It's a disturbance, yes, but it also kicks up sediment and debris from the bottom, which can attract curious or feeding fish. They might be wary for a moment, but then their curiosity or hunger takes over. They don't associate that sound with a predator actively hunting them. It's just a big, weird noise that passes. The terrifying silence that follows, however, is another story. So let's get practical. What if the slight vibrations from you simply existing on the ice are actually a good thing? Think about it. The subtle creaks of your chair, the shuffle of your feet to stay warm, the soft thump of setting your rod down. From a fish's perspective, these are just signs of life up above. They aren't sharp or alarming. They're just part of the soundscape. It's like cattle grazing in a field. Their movement doesn't scare away every other animal. It's just a normal part of the environment. By trying to eliminate these small, normal sounds, we are pulling a disappearing act. We think we're being stealthy, but we're just being weird and unnatural, and fish can sense that. Here's the core idea, the big shift in perspective. Stop trying to be invisible. Instead, try to sound normal or even attractive. The absence of vibration in a world that is defined by it is what's truly unnatural. Your goal shouldn't be to create a sensory black hole beneath your feet. Your goal should be to avoid sharp, sudden, scary noises while allowing for, or even creating, a low level of consistent, non-threatening vibration. You want the fish to know something is there, but not be alarmed by it. You want to pique their curiosity, not trigger their flight response. It's a complete 180-degree turn from how most of us were taught to fish on the ice. Imagine the zone of silence you create when you sit perfectly still. You're not making the whole lake quiet. You're creating a cone of silence that extends from you down to the bottom. All around that cone, the normal ambient vibrations of the lake are still happening, so a fish swimming along encounters this bizarre dead zone. It's like walking into a room where one corner is completely soundproof. It would immediately get your attention, and not in a good way. That's what you're doing to the fish. You're creating an anomaly in their environment, and their survival instinct tells them to be wary of anomalies, so they might swim right up to the edge of your quiet zone and then turn away. So here is practical application number 1. Don't be afraid to live a little in your ice shack or on your bucket. You don't have to sit like a statue for 4 hours straight. Shift your weight, adjust your gear, pour a cup of coffee. As long as you're not dropping the thermos, these small movements are fine. In fact, they might even be helpful. They create a subtle, consistent presence. The fish can acclimate to it. They can recognize it as that thing up there that isn't a threat. It's far better than sitting in dead silence for an hour, then suddenly making one small noise that stands out like a fire alarm in a library because the background was so quiet. And here's practical application number 2, and this one is a bit more advanced. It's the subtle tap. I've seen old-timers do this and never understood why until now. They will gently and rhythmically tap their boot on the ice, not a stomp, but a soft, rhythmic tap, tap, tap. Or they'll tap their rod butt on the ice. What are they doing? They are creating a consistent, curious vibration. They are sending a signal that isn't alarming. It's just enough to get a curious perch or a cruising walleye to turn its head and come investigate the source of this gentle, rhythmic disturbance. They are using sound as an attractant, not something to be avoided at all costs. It's the complete opposite of what most of us do. Let's look at a specific case study, perch. Perch are notoriously curious fish. They school up and they are always looking for their next meal. An area of dead silence might cause them to be wary and avoid it, but a little bit of activity, the vibration of a small jig, or even the subtle vibrations from you moving above, that can be just enough to draw them in. They want to see what's going on. Think about how many perch you catch right after you clear the ice out of your hole. That scraping and commotion doesn't scare them. It often triggers them to come and investigate. We should be learning from these little clues. Perch respond to activity, and absolute silence is the absence of activity. Now, what about walleye? They are often considered more finicky, but they are also ambush predators that rely heavily on their lateral line to detect the vibrations of prey. They are listening for the faint flutter of a dying minnow or the scuttling of a crayfish. In a world of absolute silence, your bait is just a silent visual. But if there's a low level of ambient noise from your presence, your lure's subtle vibrations might stand out more against that background. Furthermore, a curious walleye might move in to investigate the source of your subtle, rhythmic tapping and then see your lure. You're using sound to draw them into range, not trying to hide from them in a silent void. Of course, there is an exception to every rule. When is silence actually golden? The most obvious answer is in very shallow, crystal clear water. If you're fishing for spooky brook trout in 3 feet of water and you can see the bottom, then yes, stealth is absolutely key. In that situation, they can see your shadow. They can pinpoint the source of every vibration with extreme accuracy. In those specific, high visibility, shallow water scenarios, the old wisdom holds true. But for the vast majority of us who are fishing in 5, 10, 20 or 30 feet of water for perch, crappie and walleye, the game is completely different. The rules of acoustics and fish behavior change with depth. This also helps us debunk the stomping myth more accurately. It's not the vibration of a footstep that's the problem, it's the quality of that vibration. A hard, sharp stomp creates a high amplitude, shocking pressure wave. That's bad. But the soft pressure of you walking normally or shuffling your feet, that's a low amplitude, rolling pressure wave. It's a completely different signal. One is an explosion, the other is a gentle swell. Fish can easily tell the difference. So, the lesson isn't don't move your feet. The lesson is don't stomp your feet like you're trying to kill a spider. There is a massive difference, and understanding that difference is key. So I want you to conduct your own experiment next time you're on the ice. Give this theory a real test. For the first hour, follow the old rules. Be as quiet as a mouse. Don't move. Don't make a sound. See what happens. Then, for the second hour, change your approach. Don't be obnoxious, but don't be afraid to move around. Shuffle your feet a bit. Try the rhythmic tapping. Act like a normal person who is fishing on the ice. Compare the results. See if you notice more fish coming in on your flasher, or if the bite actually picks up. The proof is in the pudding, and the only way to know for sure is to try it yourself. I think you might be surprised by the results. So the big takeaway here is not that you should go out and host a dance party on the ice. It's about nuance. It's about understanding that the opposite of a scary noise isn't no noise, it's a non-scary noise. Our goal as anglers has been to achieve total silence when we should have been aiming for a natural level of ambient presence. We've been mimicking the behavior of a stalking predator when we should be mimicking the normal, non-threatening environment. The real red flag for a fish isn't the sound of your activity, it's the deafening, unnatural silence of your perfect stillness, and that simple shift in thinking might be the one thing that changes your entire winter fishing season. So there you have it. The idea that has governed ice fishing for a century might just be the very thing holding you back. The real aha moment here, the big twist, is realizing that fish live in a world of sound and vibration. It's their normal. When we try to erase our own presence by being perfectly silent, we don't become invisible. We become a giant, terrifying, silent anomaly in their world. It's like a horror movie for them. This changes everything. It means you can stop stressing about every little creak and shuffle. It means you can start thinking about how to use subtle, rhythmic sounds to your advantage to draw fish in rather than scare them away. It's about moving from a mindset of pure stealth to one of smart, natural presence. Thank you so much for watching and for being open to a new and kind of radical idea. If this blew your mind a little bit, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more content that challenges the way we think about fishing. Now I have to ask you, what's the weirdest or most unconventional thing you've ever tried on the ice that actually worked? Drop your stories in the comments below. I can't wait to read them.